Welcome. I'm delighted to be with you here again. It's Mentor Oteh. I want to talk about happiness and what I consider to be the art of happiness. What is happiness? Well, I'm not going to try and define happiness, and I say that for a useful reason. We're all individually different, and although what might make me happy and what might fulfill me, although it might be good for me, it could perhaps not be suitable for someone else. There's a science to living well, but there's also an art to living well. Fulfillment comes as an art form. You have to tailor your art form to your personality, to your dreams and goals, and perhaps to what you want from life. And so I don't intend to define happiness for you. I know what makes me happy, but what I want to do in the next few minutes is share what I consider to be some of the keys to finding happiness. I believe anyone who applies and tries to search for some of these keys will find a level of peace in mind, a level of joy and fulfillment that they may not have experienced before. Now, the first of the keys that I want to talk about is purpose. Purpose. We know of the word purpose. We've heard of it so many times. I believe that is a foundational ingredient to finding happiness and living a happy life. There are two parts to purpose. There is living your life's purpose and calling, which is in principle doing what you were born to do. But also there's living a purposeful, driven life, which is living a life every day that has meaning, that has value, where you have an intent, where you have clarity of what you're doing and why you're doing it, having reason for living. And let me talk about the two of them individually, because in a unique way they're connected, but they're also very separate. You can have a purpose-driven life, but may not be living your true life's purpose. So what is purpose? Purpose, in my opinion, is having clarity of intention, having a clarity in your mind as to what is expected of you or what you want to do. Every one of us was born for a unique reason. I believe that from the bottom of my heart. I also know that we're all here to serve one another because we're all connected with one another. So your life's purpose somehow identifies how you should serve the world. And those who have a mindset of living a legacy are normally those who find happiness. I tend to say to people that one of the best ways to live is ask yourself a question. 100 years from today, how would you want to be remembered? Now, if you can discipline yourself to sit down and write down the thoughts that come to you or the answers to that question, what you'll find is that you've literally sculptured for yourself a blueprint of how you should live. In many cases that I've seen, and also in my life, one of the things that I found was by beginning with the end in mind, it changes how you live on a day-by-day basis, but also it changes how you see the world. So the first way to start your happiness journey is, if you can, connect to your life's purpose. Discover why you were born. Recognize something that you don't choose your life's purpose, you discover it. It's something that you search for within you, you don't search for without. Now, the second strand to purpose is living a purpose-driven life. In other words, every day, there's got to be meaning to your life. There has to be a reason for waking up every day. There's got to be your why. Nietzsche said, if you know the why for anything, you can achieve almost anyhow. In other words, your why gives the what to do and the how to do it meaning. So Wake up every day with a purpose. Have an objective in mind. Have goals. Have outcomes. Have objectives. But more importantly, goals and outcomes that make you stretch. I love goals. I think perhaps if I was going to choose one single item to pass on to my kids, it would be that there is a gift in having goals. But here is the key, and this is how it connects to happiness. Every day we exchange our life for what we do. Every day. What you do daily represents what you're exchanging your life for. So, we have to be a little bit deliberate in how we spend our life, because time is life. So, you should set goals. Set goals that make something of you to achieve them. Set goals that are worthy of you. More importantly, allow yourself to be used as a vessel for the desires and the goals that are meaningful to express themselves to the world. Now, all of that deals with having a purposeful life, where you wake up in the morning and you say, I think I can achieve this. Now, here is the key. There are normally 3 levels of goals or purposeful goals. Most of us, like I did for so many years, I would always start by doing what I knew I could do. Now, this is the problem with that. If you do what you know you can do, there's no inspiration, because you know what you can do. There is no inspiration. More importantly, there's no growth. And fulfillment and happiness comes as a result of you growing, you progressing, moving from where you are and moving towards what you could become. I normally say this, that in each and every one of us, there are 2 people. One of them is who we are right now. The second is who we could become. Now, as you journey from who you are towards who you could become, that's growth. And happiness is found in growth. So, one of the things you have to do on a regular basis, on a daily basis, is set a goal. But don't set a goal based on what you know you can do. The second part of what we tend to do regularly, and I did this for a while, is we set goals that we think we can do. There's something in us there where we believe that, yeah, I think I can do this. That's better than setting goals that you know you can do. But the problem is with that is this: because you don't have a big enough why, a big enough reason, but more importantly, because you also, in a way, you think you can do it, the drive, the inspiration, the motivation, the courage, the hope in you is like a trickle. Just imagine opening a tap. You can just have a little trickle of energy coming out of water. Or you can have like a fireman's hose where energy keeps pumping out or water keeps gushing out. So here is the key. To live a purposeful, driven life, you have to have a combination of goals that you think you can do, but even more importantly, you have to have goals that you're not certain that you can achieve. Now, I know that sounds a little bit wrong, but here is the point. You've got to set a goal that excites you, but also terrifies you at the same time. It excites you because the ideas and memories and the imagination tells you that it could be fun, but maybe it terrifies you because it's an unknown territory. You've never been there before. Now, we grow when we go to the edges of our limits. When we get to the edges of our potential, that's where we grow. So, if you're not growing every day, you're taking up too much space. You're taking up too much room. You've got to get to the edge of the cliff. And here is the key. You've got to have faith in yourself that even when you take a leap, that you can grow your wings on the way down. So here is my recommendation. To find happiness through purpose, if you can, discover your life's purpose. But more importantly, every day, live a purposeful, driven life. And you do that by setting goals daily and consistently. But more importantly, set big enough goals that inspire you. Now here is the key. Inspiration is a gift. It's the gift from the person within you who knows to the one without who guesses. In other words, when you're inspired, you're in spirit, you're connecting to the real you, and the real you knows everything. Now, inspiration comes from setting big enough goals. So that's the first key to happiness, purpose. Now let's talk about the second key to happiness. I call this your environment. Your environment. Now your environment comes in two parts. Your external environment or your internal environment. You see, there are two worlds. There is the world in your mind and there is the external world. You have to manage both. But more importantly, you have to discipline yourself to stand guard at the gate to your mind, to your world. Now, see your world and your mind as a garden. You can't just let anyone just step in and walk on your freshly grown flowers. But more importantly, you can't just let anyone come in and plant weeds. So your environment is important. Now let me start with your external environment and then we can come into your internal environment. And what is your external environment? There are some people who work better, who feel happier in a different climate. Some people want to be close to the sea. They have a connection with water. Some people have a connection with nature. They want to be close to a forest. Some people have a connection with people. Some other people have a connection with beautiful buildings. Some people have a connection with arts and imagery and various things about life that gives life meaning. You have to understand what your environment is. Now think about this. If you take a fish out of water, the fish dies after a few minutes or after a few hours. And the reason is simply because the fish is not built to be on land. The fish is created to be in water. That's where its genius, that's where its creativity, that's where all of its gifts and talents or skills, whatever you want to call it, comes alive. Similarly, if you take a bird from a cage and let it fly, then you can see the genius in the bird. The bird is in the environment doing what it was created or born to do. Take the same bird, put it in water, it drowns very quickly. Now you and I, we've been gifted with a unique assignment in life, a purpose, a mission, a calling, a task, if that's what you want to call it. And more importantly, because we're here to serve people, we have to understand the environment where the people we're here to serve exist. In other words, find your tribe. You're not called to the entire world. You're not Jesus. You're not Muhammad. You're not Buddha. You're you. So be you. Now this simply means that you've got to recognize where you're celebrated, not where you're tolerated. Find people who see the good in you. Find people who see the good in you even far beyond you seeing yourself. This requires an understanding of the environment. In other words, you and I are here for a reason. Part of that reason is to serve. But the people we have to serve, we have to identify where they are. And when we find them, they recognize our gifts. They recognize our uniqueness. They recognize our differences. Now, one of the key reasons why most people are not happy is because most people have not embraced who they really are. Most people are not very happy with who they are. Now, I don't blame a lot of people for that because, you see, society has given us all these various models of what beauty looks like and what perfection should be and how we should live our lives. And society now tells us that we have to conform. They tell us, well, if you don't have long enough blonde hair, or if you're not a brunette, or perhaps if you're not 6 foot, or if you're not skinny, or if you're not gorgeous, or if you don't have an IQ of 170, then you're not good enough. They've labeled these stereotypes of what happiness should look like. Now you have to be careful not to accept that image, because that's not you. Most people are unhappy because they are trying to be good replicas to other people. Now that's really powerful. Most people are unhappy because they are trying to be good replicas to other people. Now, but here is my question. How can you be a good replica to someone else when you were created and born as an original? How? Now we have 7 billion people alive today. 7 billion. Of the 7 billion people, none of us is like you. 7 billion. None of us is like you. Now we've had 107 billion people who have lived from the past. Of the 107 who lived, none of them were like you. Now long after I'm gone, done with this journey called life, and long after you're gone, the world will continue and there will be billions and perhaps trillions of people to come. What I find beautiful is none of them will still be like you. You're unique. You're in a class all by yourself. What does that mean? The world has never seen one like you. So you have to embrace the fact that you're different. Rather than shy away from your difference, embrace it, celebrate it, because your happiness comes in recognizing your gifts, your uniqueness. You see, our similarities will create a level of comfort amongst our peers, but it's what makes you different that needs to be celebrated. So if you want to find happiness, find the environment. When you find the environment, you'll find the people. The people recognize the greatness, they recognize the God, they recognize the genius in you, and that is your tribe. So, in addition to finding the right environment, be you and do you. At the temple in Apollo, in Delphi, are 2 words inscribed on the temple. The 2 words say, know thyself. Know thyself. Very powerful words. But let me take it a step further and add another statement to that. Know thyself and then be thyself. Happiness comes when you combine both. But you see, to be yourself, you have to know yourself. But to know yourself, you have to study yourself. So happiness comes as a byproduct of recognizing who you are through study. What you find is the more you study about you, the more you realize that you have everything you need within you. Now let's move to the 3rd key to happiness. The 3rd key to happiness is what I call association. I can spend the whole day talking about association. And I can do that simply because destinies, dreams, goals, objectives have been sacrificed as a result of the failure to recognize the impact that association can have on us. So I'm going to ask you a question in the words of the great Jim Rohn. Who am I around? What are they doing to me? What have they got me saying? What have they got me thinking? What have they got me becoming? But more importantly, is that okay? Now you can replace the I in that sentence with you. So I'm going to ask you, who are you around? What are they doing to you? What have they got you thinking? What have they got you saying? And who have they got you becoming? And More importantly, is it okay? It's not for me to judge, it's for you to judge. Our associations play a role in who we become. You have to audit the people you spend your time with. Now, someone once said that you're always going to be a reflection of the people you spend the most time with by influence, but also the people you associate with, either by listening to them or interacting with them, or even perhaps reading their life stories. So my question is, who are you around? What have they got you thinking? What have they got you becoming? And is that okay? The more you hold on to a picture, opinions that people have of you, especially if those pictures and those opinions are not true, the more you sacrifice your destiny of the future. So you have to apply what Paul said, forgetting the things that are behind, looking neither to the left, looking neither to the right. I move towards my goal. I move towards my mark. Who are you around? If you want to be happy, you've got to spend time with happy people. You've got to be surrounded by people who are joyful and people who are thankful for life, people who see the good in life. See, there's a story about two men. Two men stand in a prison cell, and as they look out through the window, the first man, all he can see are the iron bars that are restricting them and keeping them in that prison cell. The second man, on the other hand, looks through the same window and he sees a beautiful sunset, and that sunset puts a smile on his face. What was the difference? Same window, it was simply a matter of perspective. You have to find people who have a happy perspective, a perspective of life, and people who want to live, people who love living and who want to share that experience. Now, this is difficult for most of us because we don't get to choose our family. We're born into it, but we choose our friends. But I'm going to say something controversial here. Do an audit of your associations and classify them into 3 groups. The first group should be your inner circle. The second group should be your outer circle. The third should be called others. In your inner circle, you should only have people who trust and who believe in you, people who support your visions, people who support your dreams, people who love you for who you are. More than anything, you need people in that group who know everything about you, your flaws, your shortcomings, your setbacks, your history, your past, but they still love you for who you are. That's your inner circle. Now, in that inner circle, you need to put happy people as well. For many of us, this might mean you have to go searching for the right people and bring them into that circle. Now, your outer circle, you need to push everyone else into that circle. And that should also include family members. In your outer circle, we call that what we refer to as your limited association group. Now, these are people perhaps you can't cut off from your life. Now, and in many cases, you don't have to. But what you can do is limit the exposure you have to them. In other words, don't invest a lot of time and energy and efforts if they don't support you, if they're always negative. And the reason is simply because thoughts are creative. Don't be naive in thinking that, as many people say, sticks and stones might break my bone, but words can never affect me. That's a statement of ignorance. The reason is because your thoughts and your words are creative. And unlike what most people think, your thoughts and your words, spoken words or internalized words, do not go to your past. Your spoken words and your thoughts precede into your future, where they create, and the reality of what they've created awaits you. So what you want is, you want an environment and an association of what I call empowering prophets and speakers. And by prophets, I'm not talking about something religious. I'm just saying we're all prophets because we're all speaking and creating with our thoughts and words. But what you want is people who can speak life into you, speak happiness into your everyday experience. Now, association is important, so choose your associations very carefully. But let's talk about the external, what I call the others. I would say you need to limit and reduce your exposure to anyone else who is not in the inner circle and not in the outer circle and who hasn't qualified. Keep them at arm's length. Create a gatekeeping system so that they don't even have access to you directly. Now, I remember a number of years ago, I had a few casual friends. But people don't realize the power of their words. And something as simple as a text message can plant a seed in your mind that stays with you for months, for days, for weeks. And that picture that they place in your mind could be a negative, something that keeps you down. I think in many cases, it could really be the truth. It could be the truth about your past that you're trying to let go of, you're trying to forget. And for some reason, they just simply regurgitate it and they pass it back to you because they don't recognize or realize the impact of their words. Now, they might also have been informed a number of times not to do that, but some people are just interested. And that's a word I use deliberately. And I found myself in a place whereby I had peace and happiness. And this idea, just one idea, planted in my mind changed my entire state. Now recognize something, that whatever you focus on, you will feel. Whatever you focus on, you will feel. Your thoughts decide your feelings. Your feelings are based on what you focus on. Your feelings have to be expressed. Now for some people, imagine a feeling of fear is placed in your heart. If you suppress that fear and you hold on to that fear and internalize that fear, something happens. It begins to create anxiety, uncertainty, and it could manifest through your physical body as depression. But it all began as one thought. The actions you take, if you repeat it, becomes a habit. Your habits create your results. So here is the point. How do you change your results? You simply control what you think about. But to control what you think about, you have to control what you see, what you hear, and the people around you. So association is important. Mind your association very carefully. Stand guard. Stand guard at the gate of your mind and control who has access to you and control who has influence over you. Now let's move to a different key to happiness. Number 4, choice. The power of choice is something that separates us from all other life forms. The power to choose. Now I believe, personally, this is a subjective view. I don't ask you to accept it with me, but I believe personally that there are no victims in life. There are no victims in life. We are all volunteers. And life does not get better by chance, by luck. It gets better by choice. In all aspects of your life, including the area of happiness, you are the lowest common denominator. In all areas of your life, you're present. You're the lowest common denominator, meaning that nothing happens without your participation, directly or indirectly. So, happiness is a choice. You can choose to be happy. Happiness is not something that you hope for. I tend to say to people, how can you find something without something outside you when it already exists in you? For most of us, the struggle of life lies in the fact that We are trying to find something that we already are. Happiness resides inside, and we have a choice to go within and be happy. Now, what does that mean, and how can you even begin to find happiness within you? Well, it's very simple. Recognize that happiness is a state, just in the same way that poverty is a state, good health is a state, joy is a state, gratitude is a state. That state we create in our mind. So you can choose to create a happy state, a picture. Now, by state, what I'm referring to is really an image, a motion picture, a still picture, but it's simply an image in your mind. You can create a happy state, a state filled with love and joy and bliss. Now, some people might call it daydreaming. I have a different term that I call it. I call it creative visualization. I think that's a better concept. It's a better name. I also call it imagination. You see, imagination creates reality. By creating a state in your mind, a happy state, that state can be lived. Now think about this. If you look around where you are right now, everything you see, as a matter of fact, the device that you're watching on began as an idea, as a thought in someone's mind. So everything we see in life began within as an idea. Someone had to think of the idea and then take action, believe in that idea, convert those ideas into facts, and then it became products, services, it became reality. So in the same way, you and I can create a state of happiness, a picture of a happy life, what it would be like. Just imagine, just ask yourself this simple question. What would life be like if I was very happy? What would my ideal life look like? Now, if you can just allow yourself to emotionally get involved with that idea, that picture, what you're doing is you're creating a state. And you can externalize that state by living in the feeling of the wish fulfilled. In other words, you create a picture of happiness in your mind. It's very clear. It's very vivid. You believe it. The key is belief. You expect it and you start acting like it. And in a way that you don't understand, what you find is that there'll be a series of circumstances along the way that draw you into that state that you created, that you believe. You see, by thoughts, what we want is created. By feeling and expectation, it's sent to us, but we receive it by action. So you must start to act like the person you want to be. And that's the reason why I said happiness is a choice. You can choose to be happy. You can also choose not to be happy. Now this brings us very nicely into the next item, the next key to happiness. I've talked about it briefly already. It's called imagination. Now what is imagination? And I know what you might be thinking, what does imagination have to do with happiness? Imagination has everything to do with happiness. There is a power that exists, and that power has wisdom. That power is accessible to every one of us. Some people call it infinite intelligence. Some call it divine intelligence. Some people call it the ego, the superego, the subconscious, the superconscious. Some people even call it by a name. Now, I don't really know, and I don't really mind what you choose to call it. I just hope you understand the concept. But there is a power. We are the operant power. The power exists. We can tap into the power. We can use the power whenever we want to create whatever we want. But we have to put the right ingredients so that that power can create what we want. And we do that by thought and by feeling. Imagination is something that is not used as much as it should be. The reason is because very few of us were trained and taught how to use our imagination. Now think about this. If I think back to my childhood days, still being a very young boy, many of you might relate to this. There were times when I would just simply be daydreaming and creating pictures of what I want to be. And people around me would say, you have to stop daydreaming. You're poor. You can never achieve that. So at a young age, we discourage people from using their imagination. Very young, a baby playing around, we let them be, because at that point in time, they're not being disruptive. However, as you start to grow, you start to say things. You go home and you say to my mom, I'm going to become the president of a country. I'm going to become a very successful businessman. And your mom says, well, how are you going to go to school? We don't have the money to feed. To go to school, you need money. We don't have money. So you need to stop dreaming about becoming a president and stop dreaming about this beautiful, happy life, because it's for a selected few. So you're discouraged from using your imagination, and you're told to be real. Some would even say you need to think like an adult. So we become adulterated in our thinking. We stop thinking and we start conforming and copying. For that reason, many of us, even when we get to the age of 30 and 40 and 50, we still don't know how to use our imagination. Now, if you want to create happiness, you've got to use your imagination. And the reason is because nothing appears in reality without it being created internally. And the creation process begins with your imagination, but it follows a sequence. I tend to say to people, what do you want? Imagine that I had a magic wand, and this magic wand could give you anything you want. What would you ask for? Now, I found that if I ask this question to 10 people, less than 2 people can tell me very clearly, specifically what they want in detail in such a way that it could be made manifest. Most people just say, I want more, but they can't really describe what they really want. And here is the point. If you want to use your imagination to create happiness, you have to start by learning how to fantasize, how to daydream, how to create pictures in your mind. Now, recognize something, that there is a difference between using your imaginative faculty and using your senses. I'll give you a good example. Let's assume, for example, that you've just lost your job. So in reality, you don't have a job. It's difficult for you to find happiness in that present state. But here is the key. You don't find happiness as a result of what has happened to you. You don't find happiness as a result of what is about to happen to you in the future. Happiness comes from deciding to be thankful in all things, not for and not about. In. So it's simply you saying, listen, I'm going to create this picture in my mind where I have my ideal job, where I'm paid much more, where I'm loved by the people who I work for, and I'm going to see that picture. So my natural eyes, when you see with your natural eyes, we call that sight. Your eyes will show you things as they are. Sight is a function of using your eyes. But when you use your mind, when you use your imagination, we say that's vision. Now, everyone who finds happiness, everyone who finds success and good health and good fortune, they have to go through this interesting cycle of you discipline your sight and your senses so that they don't limit you. You allow your imagination to rule so that you can see things first in your mind and hold on to that. Now, think about this. Walt Disney created the Disneyland Empire first in his imagination. Now, when Disneyland was completed, a reporter went up to his wife and said, "It's a shame that Walt never got to see such a beautiful kingdom that he had just created." And his wife waited and wasted no time in replying, "Yes, he did. He saw all of this in his imagination." You have to use your imagination to create happiness first. The great writer says, "Go into the closet and shut the door." What does that mean? It simply means shut the door of your senses. Shut off your eyes, shut off your ears, shut off your sense of touch and smell and sound, and use your imagination. Because the more you allow your senses to influence how you feel, the more you limit yourself from happiness. Live in the feeling of your wish fulfilled, and you can only do that in your imagination. Now, I hope that's been useful. Now, let's move very quickly. I want to talk about different concepts. I started a few minutes ago and I said that one of the things that separates us from all life forms is choice. But interestingly, I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about something called speech. Mind and speech are two unique gifts we have that give us the ability to create and live how we want to live. What is speech? Those internal thoughts that you have within, those spoken words through self-talk that you utter, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. Your speech is creating your happiness or the lack of it. What does that simply mean? And how can you get better at controlling your speech? The great writer said that the tongue is like a rudder of a ship. Your tongue is taking you in the direction of your destination, your desired destination, or it's like an anchor holding you down and stopping you from moving into the world that you deserve. So my question is, what are you saying to yourself every day? Both internally and verbally. Most people don't realize that the creative process is on every single time, and your internalized words are creating your reality. I once walked into a gym studio, and in the studio was another young lady using the studio, and I wanted to use part of the studio, and we both agreed that we could share the studio. But I remember something. At the end of my session, as I walked off, I noticed that she had some bandages on her foot, on her leg. And I said, "I wish you a speedy recovery." And as I was walking out, she said something that I remember. She said, "Well, I'm very clumsy. I'm always injuring myself, and I'm sure I'm going to do this again." Now, I didn't know this lady, and so it wasn't my place to try and educate her at that point in time. But I walked away with a sad feeling. The sad feeling was simply because in my head I was saying, you should be your best cheerleader. You shouldn't be your best critic. Let the whole world be your critic, but you should be your best cheerleader, your best coach. But more importantly, your words are creative. You're creating your future. And that which you wish upon yourself, knowingly or unknowingly, will come to pass. My words will never return back to me void, but they will achieve that to which I send them. You have to be very careful about what you're saying to yourself, internally and externally. Happiness comes as a result of controlled speech. In other words, let all of your thoughts be good. This is what he says. Whatever is good, whatever is just, whatever is kind, noble, peaceful, admirable, think on those things. In other words, anything that doesn't fall under the happy circle, you have to let go of. Happiness comes first by controlling your thoughts. But what about your spoken words? Every day we're saying things verbally. You have to control it. But more importantly, you have to be deliberate in speaking positive thoughts. So I usually say self-talk is a must. If you understand the concept of self-love, self-talk is saying to yourself what you may and would have wished that other people may have said to you. Self-talk is recognizing your greatness and affirming that greatness within you. That's simply self-talk. Self-talk is saying what you want to see in your future. Now, if spoken words are creative, then we all have to be really good at self-talk, because it means every single day that we speak positive thoughts and happy thoughts and joyful thoughts and peaceful thoughts to ourselves, we know that our future is going to be better. So what I would suggest that you do if you don't do this is get into the habit of self-talk. And that is simply a process of loving yourself. We do this every day. We see other people and we say, you look great. I love your dress. I love your smile. Now, why don't you say that to yourself? But to say that to yourself, you've got to go back to the first point that I started with. You have to know yourself. Now, many of us will never affirm ourselves because we lack wisdom about who we are. Now, I say that with a level of humility, and I say that because most people don't know. I believe personally that there are three parts to who we are. There are three parts of our personality. There's the spiritual, there's the mental, and there's the physical. This, my friend, is a garment. It's my physical garment. When my journey is over, I'm going to let go of this physical garment, but I will still live. So, I am not my body. I am not what you see. I'm not who you even say I am. The real part of me you will never get to see with your natural eyes, because the real part of me is spirit, and that part of me is perfect. You cannot change it. You cannot even make it better. It's perfect. Now, in between my spiritual state and my physical state, I've been given a mind. That mind will help me create anything that I want. So, one of the things you must understand if you want to be happy is recognize the difference between your physical and your spiritual, but also your mind. Your physical body will need love, nurturing, and support. Your mind will need renewing, but your spirit is perfect. There's nothing you can do about it. The real you is spirit. So, happiness comes by recognizing who you are. And that is, I'm a spirit. And my spirit is perfect. My nose and my ears and my eyes may not be as beautiful as it should be. The world may not see me as completely gorgeous. I might have a broken hip. I might have a big head. I might have an accent that is not acceptable. But all of that is at the lowest level of your personality. That is physical. You've got to transcend and move up to the spiritual level where you see yourself as perfect. And because you recognize that what you are, other people are, you also recognize that other people are perfect. So when you interact with people, you look beyond the physical. But more important, when you look at yourself, especially standing in the mirror, you look beyond what you see in the mirror, because that's not you. You're wearing a garment. And the time will come when you have to let go of the garment. You toss it away like you toss away a worn dress, and the pure you comes out. So happiness comes with recognizing and understanding who you are. It's a choice, and every day we have to choose what we say by spoken word, by speech. Now let me move to the next. The next is going to be quite practical because it deals with what we do daily. The seventh key to happiness is habits. Habits. You see, happiness is a lifestyle. But to create that lifestyle, you need habits. Now, all of us, think about this. Every one of us, we are controlled by a number of very, very unique elements in life. Our beliefs, our paradigms. And a paradigm is simply habits. Our conditioning. We're controlled automatically in various aspects of our life without even knowing. If you drive, think about this the next time you get into your car and you're driving. Some of us can drive, and whilst driving at the same time we can have our Bluetooth on and we're talking to someone on the phone, and we have an apple in our hand and we're driving with one hand. Now, how can you do all of that, considering that when you started to learn how to drive, it was so difficult for you to let go of the wheel and change gears? The reason you can do all those multitasks easily without even thinking about it is because it's become habitualized. Driving now for you is a habit, is automatic. You don't have to think, change the gears, clutch, accelerator, put the trafficator, look at the mirror. It's a habit. A child starts off and she is taught how to brush their teeth. You do it repeatedly for a number of months, a number of weeks, and they wake up in the morning and without you coming to instruct them, they go straight to the bathroom and they brush their teeth. And whilst they're brushing their teeth, they're probably talking to you at the same time. It's a habit. It's become automatic. So happiness has to become a lifestyle. You have to design happiness. Then you have to practice happiness consistently until it becomes a habit. Once it becomes habitualized, the more you go through the routine and the ritual of living a happy life, it becomes a lifestyle. There's no difference between people who are happy and those who are not. But I would say there's a difference in how they live, and that comes down to their habits. What you do daily and consistently decides who you become permanently. So if you want to be happy, create happy habits. Really that simple. But how do you create happy habits? Very easy. Forget about the future. I say to people normally that life and the good life for most people is somewhere way out there in the future. You have to bring it into the present. Your life is lived in a day, and a day is in life. So if you want to create a happy life, you simply have to create one happy day. And at the end of the day, sit down and ask yourself two questions. What did I do right? What could I have done differently? What you did right, celebrate it. What you could have done differently, take the feedback, and the next day repeat the same activities of the day before with the corrections. That's how you create a happy life. Yesterday is like a cashed check. Tomorrow is like a promissory note. It's not here yet. Now and today is all the life you have. So to create a happy life, you simply have to create one happy day. But to create a happy day, you have to create happy activities. So here is the key. You have to surround yourself and schedule happy moments. I say to friends of mine, we spend about 50% of our waking life working. And for most of us, work is a job. And because it's a job, we experience burnout. For few people, it's really a mission and a purpose. And for those selected few, they're excited about living. They wake up every morning looking forward to the day. They go to bed dreadful of the fact that they've had to let go of what they love doing for a few hours. But for most of us, for most people, it's just a job. So one of the things you have to do is schedule around your lifestyle activities that bring meaning and joy and happiness. And I normally say to people, well, think about this. What do you enjoy doing? There are activities that will bring you a little bit of excitement and interaction with people. So maybe learn how to swim, schedule daily activities of reading a book, a novel, a non-fiction book, maybe learn how to dance, get around, maybe group dancing, where you can interact with people and you can flow and it's a bit playful. Maybe join a gym, join a class of people where you have goals and you can be accountable to each other. But you have to get away from the lifestyle whereby it's repetitive and it's, you know what's going to happen is work and sleep and work and sleep. You've got to bring in uncertainty into your life and bring in variety into your life. And that comes with scheduling activities, and learn how to cook, learn how to become a chef, maybe run for charity, join a club, but do something. But here's where it gets interesting. The activities you do daily become your routine. The difference between someone like Michael Jordan and an average basketball player comes down to their routine. You see, Michael Jordan for a number of years will wake up every morning before 5 a.m. and he will simply shoot a number of free throws, thousands and thousands, because he was applying a principle called deliberate practice. And the more he practiced, the more he got better. So he was doing what you might call something ordinary, but he was doing with a view of making it extraordinarily beautiful, and he was doing it consistently. The difference between people who are happy and those who are not is that happy people do consistently and with purpose that which brings them happiness. Unhappy people do it occasionally. You can't live a happy life if you're scheduling your happy moments for the weekend or for the holiday in 6 weeks and 8 weeks. It has to be a daily experience. So your habits decide your success, but also your habits determine your happiness. Now let's talk about number 8. And I'm going to bring this into a close very shortly. Gratitude. You've heard a lot of people say gratitude is the key to wealth. But why is gratitude important? I have a different philosophy about life. I obviously respect yours, and I imagine you do have one. I have a different belief. I imagine you have one. There might be some similarities in our beliefs. There might be some differences, and I welcome both. But I believe personally that gratitude brings you and draws you closer to the source of all things. Now think about this. If all you have tomorrow will be based on what you were thankful for today, what would you have tomorrow? Now I know we're dealing with tomorrow, so let me bring it back one day and ask you, what would you be entitled to today based on your gratitude from yesterday? Now for many of us, we'll both agree that it wouldn't be much. We live life so fast, and for that reason we don't stand and say thank you. Now gratitude brings you closer to the source of all things. The more you're grateful for life and what you have, the more you will have more to be grateful for. But what I found in my experience is this. If you're thankful for what you haven't received yet, that which you want is sent to you quicker. Because in a way, if you have kids, you know very quickly that gratitude is not something that is inborn. It's a habit. It's something that has to be taught. You have to teach a child to say thank you and to say it's a pleasure. You have to teach them. So gratitude is not something that we're born with. So we have to learn how to be grateful. That means develop daily habits of showing gratitude. You wake up in the morning and you say, listen, I'm grateful for just 3 things. Think about 3 things in your life that you're really grateful for, and get emotionally involved with those 3 specific things. It could be your loved ones, it could be your job, it could be potentially your health. It doesn't really matter, but find 3 things every day. First thing in the morning, sit down and just write down 3 things you're happy about and happy for. Now here is the reason why happiness is a product of gratitude. When you're grateful, the feeling you have is positive as opposed to negative. Here is the key. You can think positive and you can think negative, but you cannot do both at the same time. So you cannot be grateful and fearful at the same time. You cannot be grateful and sad. You cannot be grateful and unhappy. So gratitude sets you up into the feeling of positive expectancy and positive acknowledgement. That feeling sets up what I called the creative process, whereby by thinking about what you are grateful for, you're putting those thoughts and those images in your imagination. Your imagination is working. It's creating more. The law of attraction works. Gratitude activates the law of attraction. Now, most people think the law of attraction, all you have to do is think about what you want. Let me share my idea about the law of attraction. There are 4 laws that we all have to understand. I'm going to talk about one of them next. The first is the law of attraction. It simply says, if you think positive thoughts, you attract positive things. If you have positive feelings, you attract positive feelings. If you look for positive people, you will find them. That's the law of attraction. Very simple. But there is a law called the law of action, which simply says, when you've done all the thinking, you have to get off your butt, you have to take action, you have to work. Because the law of cause and effect follows the law of action. You have to do something to get something. But let me share the third law, which is called the law of belief. Now, the law of belief can also be called the law of expectation. In other words, for the law of attraction to be activated, you must first set up the law of expectation and belief. The law of belief sets up the law of attraction. The law of attraction, if you take action, you get what you want. However, there is a 4th law. That's what I'm going to talk about next. It's called the law of assumption. The law of assumption supersedes all of those 3 laws. The law of assumption simply says, if you assume that which you want is already yours, if you believe it in your heart, if you can feel it emotionally, if you can think from that feeling, not think of. You see, because the law of attraction teaches you to think of what you want. The law of assumption teaches you to think from what you want. In other words, what would it feel like if I had my desires fulfilled? You think from it. You live in the assumption that is already yours. That which you wish for would automatically be made manifested in your world at the right time. It won't be immediately, because there is a time for everything under the sun. There is a time to sow, there is a time to reap. You cannot do both in the same season. You cannot do both at the same time. What you have to do is plant the seed, do it well, and let it be. Imagination creates reality. The timing, leave that to something else. Don't even think about it. So the law of assumption is a principle that gratitude is founded on. You give thanks for what you don't have with expectation that it will become yours. Very simple, very powerful. By giving thanks and assuming that what you want, though in reality it's not visible, by assuming that you already have it, you activate a law of the universe and it comes to you. Now, most people say, when I get it, then I'll be grateful. But you can't live by such flawed philosophy. The feeling sets up the reality, not the reality setting up the feeling. So, gratitude is a must if you want to be happy. When you're grateful, you're applying what I call the highest level of wealth consciousness. You've raised yourself to the spiritual level of understanding. You've gone beyond the physical level of thinking about things and what to get. You're now living at the conscious wealth level of spirit. Gratitude is a language of those who understand the spiritual level of consciousness. So I would say, if you want to be grateful, if you want to be happy, find in you gratitude. For so many people it's difficult because you may be going through experiences that obviously are difficult to find happiness in. You've lost a loved one, you've lost a job, perhaps you just had an accident, perhaps emotionally you've been hurt, it's difficult to find happiness in that point or at that place. But the key is you're not giving thanks and you're not being grateful for what you have. You're just being grateful because that's who you are. And the final statement I want to talk about in relation to gratitude is this. Gratitude is saying to the person within you that you recognize that they mean well for you. And though you do not know, you're saying, I'm happy to follow your lead. I'm happy to trust you because I know that which I want physically, emotionally, you will give me at the right time. So it allows you to become one with thyself. Now let me move very quickly and talk about, I'm not sure if I'm number 8 or if I'm number 9, I'm not really sure. But I want to talk about, I'll call this number 9 or number 8, correct me later on if you will. Giving. We all want to find happiness, but to find happiness, you have to give it first. This is what it says, give, and then you will receive. Now, some people say it's impossible to give until you receive. I understand that logic. So you might be saying, how can I give happiness when I'm not happy? I understand the logic of you have to receive before you give. I get it. I believe we all come into the world as receivers. We receive love from our parents, our guidance, we receive instruction, we receive training, until we get to a point where we can now think for ourselves and now we can give. I get that. But here is the point. When you're dealing with tangible things, yes, you're correct. You have to receive too. If I walked up to you and said, I like some oranges. Now you cannot give me an orange except you have one. Yes, that's a tangible item. However, when you're dealing with intangible items like happiness and joy and peace and love, you can give because it's in you already. You have the ability to create happiness for other people. So, if you want to be happy, you have to find someone else and create the experience of happiness for them. Now, if you've studied or you know anything about Alcoholics Anonymous in the group, they have like a 12-step process to completely recovering from the control of alcohol. But here is what's beautiful. If you do step number 1 and number 2 and you don't do the 10, you fail. If you do 1 to 9 and you don't do the remaining 3, you will fail. If you do the first 11, you will go through a period of not drinking alcohol, but eventually you will succumb. However, if you do number 12 and not do any of the others, you succeed. What is number 12? Simply find someone who is going through the same challenges you're going through and help them overcome their addiction to alcohol. In other words, you've got to give what you want. So happiness comes from recognizing what you have in you, which is love. We are love. At the core, we are love. So you can give love. You can give hope. You can give your listening ability. You can give peace. You can give to others what you want. And by giving what you want, in a strange way that I can't explain, that which you want is drawn back to you. And guess what? It comes back in good measures, pressed down, shaken together, and overflowing. It's a law of life. If you want to be happy, find someone and make it a responsibility on your part to give them happiness. That's how you find happiness. It's one of the keys to happiness. You find someone who you can pour into them. Forget about yourself and just see yourself as a servant pouring into another. If you have a cup and it's got contents in it, the best way to fill up the cup is you pour out, and by pouring out into someone else, you now have space for someone to pour into you. It's a simple philosophy of life. Let me talk about number 9. Key number 9 to happiness. Recognize that your lifetime is lived in 3 parts. Your past, your present, your future. The past is gone. The future is yet to come. All you have is right now. So, if you want to be happy, you've got to learn how to let go of your past. The mistakes you've made in the past, let it go. You've paid a price. You and I have paid a price for our past. I believe we paid a price in full. We don't have to pay twice. So let go of the past. Whatever you've done in the past, good, bad, or indifferent, let it go. And that even includes the happiness you had in the past. But when you let go of the past, don't live in the future, because that is a burden in itself. You don't want to live in this futuristic world, hoping and holding on to that future that you failed to live. Life is now. Live now. And that simply means you live in the moment and you live happy right now. Now, one of the biggest causes for unhappiness for most people is most people are unwilling to recognize that there are things that they cannot change. You've got to let go. And because you cannot control the future, what you have is the ability to rename and reframe what you have in the present. Let me share a personal story with you. In 2004, I lost a brother. A very sad and tragic experience. I still miss him. I'm still grieving. I don't think I will ever recover from the experience. But at the moment that it happened, I kept thinking about, we as a family kept thinking about all of the reasons why it was unfair. We kept thinking about it as we've lost him for good and we're never going to see him. And some people say you go through 5 or 6 stages of grief by choice. I found peace and contentment with the experience when I decided that I could change the meaning and I could change the name that I associated with the experience. Before then, I had seen the experience as though he had died. And by changing the name, this is the power of spoken words. You simply change the name because you have speech, and the power in your speech can control how you feel. By reframing the experience and saying, rather than say he's passed away and he's dead, by saying that he's graduated from life. Just in the same way that if you've been in kindergarten, you get to a stage where you get too big for the small chairs. You have to graduate to a better life. By reframing it and saying he has graduated from life, he got too big, he's evolved, that helped me find some peace and some meaning in my suffering. The point I'm making is this: we all have the ability to live in the present. We do that by simply choosing to reframe, by choosing to rename our experiences in the present. We do that more than anything by letting go of the past. You can't change the past. Let it go. There are a few things you can't change in life. You can't change the past. You can't change other people. You can try, but the more you try, the more you find unhappiness. So recognize that you can't change the weather, you can't change the past, you can't change people. You can change yourself. And all you have to focus on is yourself. And you do that by living in the now. Living in the present. Very simple. By making a decision that there are things you can't control. Now, I found in my life, during that experience, and even beyond that in various areas of life, that a lot of times I found unhappiness. Reason because I had a picture of how I thought things should be, and I had the reality of what had happened. And the picture that I had of what it should be and the reality were not the same. And the more I held on to this notion of this is how it should be, without accepting the reality, the more I found unhappiness. So, if you want to be happy, recognize and accept things as they are. Now, I'm not simply saying you do nothing about it. I'm saying accept it. If you can change it, make an effort to change it. But remember, you have to change yourself first. It's not what you get, it's who you become. That's what's important. So if you can embrace reality and work with reality whilst trying to create the future you want, that's how you stay happy. We're so unhappy in life because we have this picture of how things should be. We're trying to control the future. We're trying to change the past. We fail to live in the present. And so for that reason, we have this fluctuating feeling of moods and unhappiness and happiness, which is not what we were created to experience. The great writer says, "My wish for you is that you might have life and have life abundantly." In other words, enjoy the extraordinary life. But to do that, you cannot conform to the world and what you see. You must be transformed by the renewal of your mind. Go back, recognize what you can't change, let go of the past, dream of the future, but don't live in the future. Live in now, live in today. And by doing that, you'll find that as you walk down the street, you look and you see some beautiful flowers and you smile and you see people and you say hello. You start to recognize the small things around you that really bring happiness. Most of us think that happiness has to do with something big and grand. Sometimes it's simply a smile that you offer to someone else, but also a smile you receive from someone else. This nicely brings me into how I summarize this part of the section, and that is the word. The kingdom of happiness is within you. It's not without. It's all in you. So if you want to be happy, go within, find it, and let that experience influence how you live, what you do, and how you interact with people. Let me talk about number 10. I believe I'm at number 10 now. Key number 10. Forgiveness. Forgiveness. Very powerful, very simple, very impactful. You have to master the art of forgiveness. And forgiveness comes in two parts. You first forgive yourself, and then you forgive other people. And forgiveness of self is something that we don't do too often. Like I said earlier on, we're usually our worst critic. Forgiveness of others is a gift. It's not something you do as you've been forced into doing it. It's a gift you give yourself. Part of the reason you forgive other people and you forgive yourself is because you're trying to get yourself back into this creative position whereby your thoughts are pure, your thoughts are just, your thoughts are beautiful and nice and kind. Holding on to the past of what someone has done to you, it's a burden that you don't deserve. And whilst you're thinking about the person, they're living their life, who knows, maybe very happily, and here you are holding on to an experience that is limiting you. And guess what? That experience, because it's either internalized by thoughts or spoken words, you're recreating every time you talk about and think about it, and it's manifested in your future. And then you wonder why you're not happy. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. So I want to share with you what I think is one of the most profound ways to let go. Someone once said, let go and let God. A lot of us think you simply forget the past. I have a different view. Science teaches us that nothing is either created or destroyed. Now, if you believe that statement, then it means that your past is not gone, it's still there. Just in the same way your present is here and your future is yet to come. Nothing is lost. So one of the best ways to forgive is go back into your mind, use your imagination. Whatever experience you've had that you've been holding on to that has been negative, go back and replay the experience in your mind. But this time around, replay the experience in the perfect way, how you would have wished things should have gone. I know it sounds a bit different. We call it revision. In other words, go back and retake the exam, or go back and retake the experience. But this time around, you correct it. And the reason is because you can create. You're a creative being. By correcting your past, what you do is you sever. It's like cutting loose. You let go of the past now, because now it doesn't keep coming back into your future. Why? Because whatever you're holding on to as a thought is going into your future. You're creating your reality. But by going back and replaying the experience and imagining that it had happened just the way you would have wanted it to happen, in the perfect way, what you've done is you've created peace with your past, and now you can let go. So, do this at the end of every day. If there's something that you perhaps weren't happy with yourself, I tend to say, at the end of every day, ask yourself 2 questions. What did I do right? What could I have done differently? The whole purpose of those 2 questions is, number 1, you want to celebrate what you're doing well, to build self-confidence, but also for self-talk. You want to recognize the good in you. The reason you identify what you haven't done well, or what you could have done differently, is so you can course correct. So that you don't go into the next day with this flawed picture that distorts your self-image. And guess what? You and I can never outperform our self-image. Now this brings me to the final thing I'm going to talk about, which is your self-image. And to begin that, I want to ask you a question. Who is painting your portrait? Or rather, who painted your portrait? Individually, we all have a picture of ourselves. If you stand in front of a full-length mirror, that which you see is a reflection of what stands before it. The problem most people have in relation to finding happiness is that most people are trying to change the reflection on the mirror. But you can only change the reflection by changing the person standing in front of the mirror. What you see in the mirror is your image. But we have 2 images. We have the natural image that we see reflected on the mirror, but we also have what we call our internal image, internalized image. And your self-image has come as a result of the experiences you've had in the past, the associations, the people, your decisions and choices, your goals and dreams, and all of that forms and shapes who you believe you are. And what's powerful is, what controls you, what controls me, is not what stands before us in the mirror. What controls our actions is the image we have of ourselves internally. And those images, or that image, has been formed and fashioned, that has become our identity, it's become our belief. So some people would never see themselves as really being happy, because the image they have of themselves is one of unhappiness. So everything that I've shared with you, the 11 items and keys that I've shared so far, unfortunately, are what I call effects. If you apply all those 11 keys, you'll get some results. But there will be conditional results. If you want permanent change, you have to deal with the true cause of the problem. Everything else, unhappiness is a symptom, it's not a problem. If you want to deal with the symptom, you go to the problem. The root cause of unhappiness is self-image, the picture you have of yourself within you. So, to set a goal of finding happiness without first setting a goal of changing your self-image is a struggle against life. you will not succeed. You might try for a few days and find some artificial level of fulfillment, but eventually you'll snap back to who you've always been. You will. And the reason is because we cannot outperform our self-image. It's like an internal governor. It controls how we see life and how we react to people. It's a locked-in conditioned pattern, a picture of who we are. So if you want to find happiness, I beg of you, go back and sit down and ask yourself a simple question. What image do I have about myself? And what you have to do is change that image. And the reason you do that is simply because at a young age, before you've developed your ability to reason, everything you learn is unfiltered, normally by you. So everything and how you see yourself, the image you have of yourself, for most people, is inherited. It's someone else's picture, someone else's painting, people's opinions of you. Now, when you get to an age whereby you can think for yourself, sadly, most of us already have believed that that's who we are. And so we hold on to that picture and we build our building blocks of our lives in all areas of our life based on that self-image that was handed to us by someone else. In many cases, they're limiting opinions and limiting words. And without realizing it, we're controlled subconsciously by this conditioned belief about who we are. So I want to say this. If the results in your life are not reflective of the life you want to live, then it's evidence that some of your beliefs need to be expanded. Some may need to be changed. It might be time for you to adopt other beliefs that empower you, other beliefs that encourage you and make you feel inspired and enlightened and educate you to you becoming the best person you can be. Very difficult to do in practice because we hold on to our identity. We hold on to our beliefs. And to let go of our belief, most of us think of that to be an attack on our personal identity. But here's what I know. The real you is perfect. Spiritual, mental, physical. The physical level of your personality is the lowest level. So, if you're operating with an image that is not perfect, then it means somewhere along the journey of life, people's opinions, your experiences, your decisions, your choices, your goals and dreams have distorted the image that is true about you. What you have to do is you have to get a blank canvas and start repainting who you want to be. Now, you don't have to do that alone. If you wanted to paint a masterpiece, you can call on the likes of Picasso, you can call on the likes of Michelangelo, Rembrandt, and together you can paint a beautiful picture. Now, what does that mean in your life? It simply means you don't have to do it all alone. Find people, successful people, happy people who have great characters, who have lived the good life, who have good behaviors, who have the right attitude, and see in them something that you admire, something that you would want for yourself, and copy it. You see, success leaves behind clues. You don't have to try and reinvent the wheel. Find success and replicate it. Take all the colors that you want from life, because life is giving you all of the colors. The same colors that Picasso used to paint his masterpieces, you have access to it. But even more importantly, you have examples that you can replicate and then use that to create a picture, a new image of someone happy, someone fulfilled, someone who is content, and let go of your past. There's a simple philosophy called be, do, have. Most of us have it in reverse. So we talk about what we want to have and what we want to do. And we set our goals based on both. We seldom ask ourselves, who do we have to become first? If you want to find happiness, you first have to be happy. To be happy, you need the right self-image. You have to change the image you have of yourself. Now that's where I come to a close. I've got more to say. There are a lot more keys. But what I want you to do is ask yourself the simple question: what one idea can I implement starting right now? I believe that when you decide, set on a goal, you should never leave that moment of setting the goal, or that moment where your heart is speaking to you. You should never leave that experience without committing yourself. Now, in your case, it might just simply be maybe to start living a more of a purposeful life, more of a passionate life. So here is what I want you to do. I want you to think about everything that I've shared so far and ask yourself one question: what one thing can I do starting right now? You don't have to do all of them. 12 ideas, you don't need 12 keys. Begin with just one and do that daily and consistently until you start to see changes, and then you can start to make further improvements. Let me say this as I close. No one has all the answers. I don't consider myself to be any different. So everything I've shared with you partly has come from my experiences, but you and I are different. So just in the same way you would walk into a buffet and there's so much food on the table, take what you want. Also, if you don't find anything interesting enough for you, go to a different restaurant. In other words, what I'm simply saying is this: don't accept everything that I've shared with you. I want you to take it, study other people's material, think about it, and find what part of what I've shared you can use. And if you find one idea, then I want you to use it. And as you use it, apply the same principle every day. Ask yourself, am I improving? Or how can I get better? And I hope it's been useful. Allow me to wish you the best of luck. God bless.